Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's Grand Theft Auto 5 video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about the top 15 most forgotten about vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online. So before we get started, I should say that most forgotten does not mean worst, doesn't mean ugly or negative in any way. In fact, many of the vehicles that I'm going to be talking about today, I actually enjoy a lot. What I mean by forgotten about is very rare to see in lobbies, or you don't see them used as often as they once were. Rather, they were replaced with other vehicles that might have better performance or better functionality. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about in this video, or just vehicles from old DLCs that, again, a lot of people might have forgotten about. So as always, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. Let me know what some of your most forgotten about vehicles are in GTA Online, and hopefully this video can spark some nostalgia of maybe some of the cool vehicles you used to use in-game that you currently don't, and you might want to go back and take a look at. So without the way, let's not waste any more time, and let's get it started. All right, guys, so our first vehicle today is the Lampadari Ferrari GT sports car. So you might not remember this vehicle because it came out in the last team standing update for GTA Online. So it arrived in an update that was all about a specific game mode, not specifically the vehicles. So that's why I think a lot of people don't exactly remember this car, or it goes down as one of the most forgotten ones in the sports car category. Number one, because there's a ton of sports cars. Number two, because it came out in a DLC that didn't exactly feature the content and more featured a new game mode. And number three, it's not exactly a world burner when it comes to the sports car category. This thing is fully customized and upgraded right here. It's not exactly the speediest. You can see it has like 0 customization options that you can do. So the Ferrari GT is one of those definitely forgotten about sports cars that you really never see in Grand Theft Auto Online lobbies. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I've seen one of these cars. So that's pretty crazy, and it is the first car we're going to be looking at today. The second vehicle we're going to be looking at today is the Albany Alpha sports car as well. And you may have forgotten about this vehicle too. It came out in 2014. It arrived with the business update. Now, the reason that this is likely forgotten about is because the two other vehicles that came out in this update were the Jester and also the Turismo. So a really, really good sports car and another really, really good supercar. So this one was kind of like the third one of the lot. And once again, it was one of those just forgotten about vehicles because it doesn't have a ton of customization. Obviously, it's not one of the quickest or best vehicles to use for racing. Again, I can't even tell you the last time I've seen an Albany Alpha in Grand Theft Auto Online. So as nice of a vehicle as this is, because I think the Albany family is awesome, I never see Alphas in the game, and I don't think many of you guys have been seeing them either. And that's why it's the number 2 spot, or number 2 vehicle on our list today. Okay, vehicle number 3 we're going to be looking at today is the unarmored version of the Kuruma. So I'm sure you guys are well aware of the Kuruma, obviously the armored version, one of the most popular vehicles in the game. But when's the last time you saw a non-armored version of this car just roaming the streets of Los Santos? I feel like I never ever see that because the armored version is like the one people want. Even though it's more expensive, you're going to go for it because of its functionality. And like I said, you don't really see people racing casually in the Kuruma. I mean, it's got great customization, as you can see, but at the same rate, people are going to get the armored version because of how useful it is in contact missions and heist missions and whatnot. So unfortunately, you don't see a lot of love for this non-armored version, and that's why I wanted to include it on this list as the number 3 vehicle. All right, vehicle number 4, we're moving on to the motorcycles, and this is the Dinka Enduro. So you might remember this vehicle, you might not. It came with the heist update, and it's just supposed to be like another off-road bike. And with all the bikes we've gotten recently, and you could obviously just use the Sanchez, I don't recall anyone ever using the Dinka Enduro. And as far as kind of like off-road bikes go, it is definitely one of the more expensive ones, if I do remember, in Grand Theft Auto Online. So I never ever see this bike. I think that it's really been put on the back burner. Oops, we're falling off here. I think it's really been put on the back burner, especially after the heist update came out. I rarely ever see anyone using this motorcycle right here. Now, speaking of bikes that came out with the heist update, number 5 today is the Principai Electro. So I know that this bike has like the special KERS system or kinetic speed system, whatever it is, but I rarely ever but I rarely see anyone ever using this vehicle. I mean, this bike is really expensive. It obviously came out with the Heist update a long time ago. There's clearly better bikes in the game, like the Bati and the Akuma, that have been out since day one. So I rarely ever see anyone using the Principai Electro. It's why I put it on this list. It's one of those forgotten bikes that you're like, oh yeah, I remember that bike. That was from the Heist update, and that's exactly how I feel about this. I haven't seen one of these bikes around and online for a while, and in the motorcycle races, I rarely ever see anyone using them. So that's why I wanted to include it on this list. Those are the two bikes we're going to be going over today, and oddly enough, they're both from the Heist update, which is kind of interesting. Let's move on to supercars, and our first one on the list today is the Pegasi Vodka, and this one pains me to put on this list because this was the very first supercar that I purchased in Grand Theft Auto Online. But that should also kind of indicate why it's on this list. It was the first car I bought in GTA Online, meaning all the way back in 2013. So that should kind of show you how old this car is. I think it looks beautiful. I think it's fantastic. I think it's one of the greatest things ever. But it doesn't have a lot of customization, and it's not very good in races. And honestly, if you're going to have a supercar, you're going to need to use it in races. And there's just so many that's been out over the past few years and few updates even more recently that many of the supercars are being pushed to the back burner, but especially ones like the Vodka that didn't even release in a DLC. So I rarely see vehicles like this in online, and I hardly ever, ever see a Vodka being used in races, because if it is, it's likely going to get thrashed by many of the new and faster supercars that have already been added into the game. Okay, up next, another vehicle that I think falls into the same category as the Vodka is the Grotty Cheetah. That's right. This vehicle is just so forgotten about. It is a beautiful car, but especially with the new Grotty vehicles that have been added, even though some of them aren't supercars like the Bestia GTS, but more recently the X80 Proto, I mean, there's absolutely no reason why anyone would use these in a race now, and I rarely ever see the Cheetah. In fact, I see the Cheetah more often in Benny's shop underneath that little tarp than I do in free mode. That should just show you how rarely I see the Grotty Cheetah. And obviously, this is a beautiful car. Got some pretty cool customization on it, to say the least. But you just never see it. It's not a supercar you're going to be using in races. And it's not a supercar that I really ever see out on the streets of Los Santos. Another reason why I think it's one of the forgotten ones in the game. One, because it's so old. But also because, like I said, there's been so many other supercars added that just trump it overall. All right, the last supercar we're going to be going over today is the Vapid Bullet. Now, the Vapid Bullet is, again, the same fate here. I know it's based off an amazing car, the Ford GT, but it just doesn't ever seem to be used in online, again, especially with the new supercars that have been added into the game. I love the color scheme this car offers. I love the simplicity, but it's just so overwhelmed by many of the new vehicles. So those are the three supercars that I'm going to be including on this list. At least of the old ones, these are the ones that I see not being used as much. I know there's a lot of other old supercars in the game, like the Adder and the Entity, but for whatever reason, I still see those pretty commonly used in races, whereas I'll never see like a Bullet or a Cheetah or any of those cars used in the races, and especially in free mode too. So those are the supercars that we're going to be going over today. We got a lot more to cover though, so let's not waste any more time and let's keep it going. All right, up next, we're moving to the off-road category, and you may or may not remember this vehicle, but it is the Canis Kalahari. That's right, this vehicle came out with the Beach Bum update. Look at this little guy. This is hysterical. So the Kalahari obviously is an off-road car, and there are many superior off-road vehicles to this, but just the fact that this came out like in the first DLC, and really that there's nothing a whole lot special to it in terms of what you can do with it. It's just one of those forgotten vehicles, which is a shame because the Kalahari is awesome. It's actually got some pretty nifty customization options, and for being one of the first new vehicles that we got in Grand Theft Auto Online, it is pretty cool and it is pretty exciting. Although, like I mentioned, so many other off-road vehicles have come out after it that this one really just got swamped. Although if you still want it today, it's really, really cheap. So I definitely recommend picking it up if you want a really cool off-road cruiser. Let's move on to the sports classic category, and this one is the Lampadati Pacala. Now, this came out with the I Am Not a Hipster update, and it's really a shame that this one is a forgotten about vehicle because look at some of the cool customization. You got the crazy rusted hood, you've got the skis on top, you've got the unique license plate on the back. So that's actually kind of cool. That's like features that were pretty rare for back in the day. I think this came out in 2014. So again, this is one of those forgotten about sports classic cars that you just never see about. People always tend to use like the Black Fin or the Cockett Classic or something like that. Rarely do you ever see the Pacala being brought out. I'm not sure if it's the look or the design, but I rarely see it in races. Rarely do I ever see it in free mode nowadays, but it's still an awesome vehicle. Again, this should reinforce the fact that just because these cars are forgotten about doesn't mean that they're not amazing. The Pacala is awesome. You just never see it anymore in Grand Theft Auto Online. Okay, up next, we've got the Obey Tailgater. And I know what you might be saying right now, wait a minute, I know all about the Obey Tailgater. Well, you probably do because it's Michael's car in single player. But remember back in 2013 and 2014, when considering having this car was rare, now it's like one of the most forgotten about vehicles ever. I mean, I love the Obey Tailgater. I think it's amazing, obviously based on an Audi in real life, but I just feel like it's been forgotten because there was so much emphasis and hype on it back in early 2013 and 2014. Now I think it can be purchased on a website, and because of that, you rarely ever see it. This car used to be driven around a lot when it was considered rare, but now that it's no longer really rare, you see it less being driven around the world. It's got good customization. Obviously, you're not killing it speed-wise here, but we're doing really good in other categories. But the Obey Tailgater, Michael's car, certainly goes down as one of those long-lost, forgotten-about vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online. I wanted to get one compact car in here, and the one that I think is the most forgotten is the Classe Rhapsody, which is kind of a shame because at its time, it's a really cool car. I mean, look at the flames on the side. Like, that was pretty rare for the time when it came out. But now it's one of those forgotten about compacts. Obviously, you've got the Panto, you've got the new one, the Brioso, you've got the Ballista. That's obviously a better compact car. And this one actually came from GTA 4's The Lost and the Damned DLC. So this is like a literally a lost vehicle, if you can get my pun right there. So yeah, this is a lost vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online, or a forgotten about vehicle, but it's really cool. I like the customization. It's a super unique looking car, but as far as compacts go, there's just so many better options that you can use, and obviously you'll be seeing people use in races. All right, and speaking of GTA 4, I wanted to include one helicopter in this list, and that was the Annihilator. If you played Grand Theft Auto 4's multiplayer, you know this was the vehicle of choice. But the Annihilator isn't really anything special in Grand Theft Auto Online, one of the most forgotten about air helicopters in the game, because there are other passenger helicopters that do a better job, and there's other weaponized or militarized helicopters that do a better job, like the Savage or the Buzzard or any of those other new helicopters that have been added into the game. So the Annihilator really doesn't have a place as anything that effective. It doesn't work that well for transporting. It obviously only has the machine chain guns, doesn't have anything else. So it's almost kind of been forgotten back in the GTA 4 days, but in Grand Theft Auto 5, it doesn't serve much of a useful purpose as far as helicopters go. All right, moving on, our last category today is muscle, and this is the Vapid Hot Knife. I rarely see the hot knife in game, mainly because it's not exactly usable for races as far as muscle cars go, but also at the same rate, I think this was like a special edition car, so I'm not sure everyone has access to it, but nonetheless, the hot knife is amazingly beautiful, one of the most unique looking cars in the game, but unfortunately, it suffers the fate of just not being used all that much. It's got great customization. I think it looks really, really cool. But once again, the hot knife is just one of those vehicles that you rarely ever see in GTA free mode lobbies. All right, and finally, last but not least today, we've got the Vapid Chino. So the reason I call this a forgotten about muscle car is because it came out in Ill-Gotten Gains. And Ill-Gotten Gains was all about, like, you know, sports and supercars and, you know, crazy expensive clothing. And then this muscle car just came out. It just didn't seem to fit. It's obviously nowhere near as good as any of the other muscle cars in the game. So it is forgotten in many ways more than one, due to its DLC, the time at which it came out in, and based off of its performance as well. Just one of those extra forgotten vehicles in the game. But really, that's all the vehicle information that I have for you guys today. The top 15 most forgotten about vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online. Let me know what your list is in the comment section down below. I'm really curious to hear from you guys there. If you did go on to enjoy this video, however, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And also, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new, or you like daily GTA 5 videos like this. With all the way, guys, like I said, thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.